Hello, I'm excited today to be talking with John Nugent, author of Restoration Appreciation. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a professor of Bible and theology at Great Lakes Christian College in Lansing, Michigan. I've been there for 20 years and been a part of the restoration movement most of my entire life. And what I like to do besides teaching students is try to advance Christian thinking about the church, its nature, its mission. So I've written other books to that effect, like Endangered Gospel. That's what I like to do.
What spurred you to write this book? You're the editor of this book, so you write a chapter in there, but you also bring in a lot of different voices. What was the impulse that made you decide this is something I want to pour my heart into?
Yeah, part of it was what I believe was the state of the Christian churches in Michigan. I've been teaching at a Christian college for a long time, and there's a lot of people who love Jesus, love the Bible, and they're kind of fallen out of touch with our restoration heritage. And I saw that an important service that our college could have to our wider churches that support us is to increase their knowledge of the Christian Church, Church of Christ. And so we started an annual seminar called Restoration Appreciation at Great Lakes. And so we bring in a big namer from outside the college, and we bring in someone from within the college, and we have a lectureship of 2 really quality presentations about the restoration movement to raise awareness of our rich heritage, to instruct our own students so that they each year can kind of spend a week thinking about the restoration heritage. And it's done a lot to remind our churches where they've come from. Which has kind of given them some understanding of what is their place as a movement in the Christian world today.
The chapter that you wrote in here, chapter 3 specifically, is looking at it's a hopeful view, but you start off by saying, but I want to look at some of our shadow sides, some of our darker sides of our past, which seems like a interesting place to start when you're talking about hope to focus on these things. What made you go in that direction?
Yeah, I want to be realistic about where the Christian churches are today. You know, we are a unity movement, and yet there's a lot of shame in our churches because our unity movement splintered into 3 different movements, right? The a cappella Christian churches, the Church of Christ, the Disciples of Christ. So there's been a hesitance to take pride in our emphasis on unity because of that failure. And also, you know, at where we've been our strongest, we've tended to be the most sectarian, right? We've kind of doubled down on we have the right grip on the New Testament, the right way of practicing baptism, the right way of practicing the Lord's Supper. And once upon a time, we almost talk like we're the only ones who are doing it right, which stands in tension with our motto, we're not the only Christians.
Exactly.
We're Christians only. And so I think there's been some sectarianism in our past.
Yeah.
And which embodies the exact opposite spirit of unity. And that's left some of our people, the more they learn about our tradition, maybe ashamed when they hear about those things. And they forget what's good and valuable about our tradition. As I tried to kind of distill what is it that sets us apart, it helped to begin with what sets other traditions apart. You know, I think about the Mennonites, their commitment to peace sets them apart. The Reformed, their commitment to Calvin and his theological legacy. Right, and Pentecostals have, the miraculous works of the Spirit, the speaking in tongues. The Catholics, of course, have Mary, the Pope, right? What do we have? And when we look at our tradition, there's nothing we have that other churches don't also have. We have some key leading figures like Campbell and Stone, and they're really big to us, but they're not really big outside of our circles, right? And I think the one thing we have that makes us stand out is the fact that we have nothing that makes us stand out.
Interesting. Okay.
And because of that, what we tend to do as a movement is cling to the scriptures.
Okay.
Like, it's our thing. Yeah. It happens to be the thing that everyone else has, but it's really the only thing we have. And so you can talk about, the Catholics have the scriptures and they have the papacy, right? The Pentecostals have the scriptures and they have tongues. The Reformed have the scriptures and they have Calvin. But we have the scriptures and that's it. And so there's a sense in which our tradition, our interests are not divided between the scriptures and the rich legacy of the Catholic papacy. We do not have the scriptures and the rich peace heritage of the Mennonites. And so other denominations have these twin foci. The fact that we only have scripture means that we tend to focus on the scriptures in a concentrated way because that's all we have.
Yeah.
And so our church camps are really devoted to the scriptures and scripture training. Our Christian colleges, the scriptures play a huge part in our curriculum, much more so than other Christian colleges from other denominations. Our church programming tends to be heavy in our Bible study focus. And I think that's something we can embrace. And not that makes us better than everyone else, right? It's the fact that we only have the scriptures doesn't mean we're better than people. They all have the scriptures too, and it means a lot to them. But for us, our focus on the scriptures exclusively is a distinctive that we should be proud of, that we should lean into, that shouldn't make us think we're better than everyone else. To have the scriptures alone as our distinctive does not mean it's our only resource, right?
Right.
And so I think one of the things we try to do in the book as we talk about, some of the weaknesses of the Christian church, the Church of Christ historically, we try to highlight how something like the Didache, something from the early church fathers, is a valuable resource for people who focus on the scriptures. There's a chapter on the creeds and confessions, like kind of an honest assessment. How, what has our rejection of creeds historically, how has that made us naive in some ways about what's going on and the unwritten creeds that happen in our life, but also how does it make us maybe ignorant of some really important debates that have happened in the past and that get represented in the creed. So there's a critique of our scripture-only stance in it that says we should be one that leans heavily into the scriptures but appreciates the valuable contributions of church history, that appreciates the big thinkers, right? But that still doesn't mean we can't double down and lean into and emphasize the scriptures in a concentrated way because we don't have a lot else that makes us stand apart. And I do think we share the great tradition of theological thought with all the other denominations, like we share the scriptures. But if you look at our scholars, we don't stand out for having like a strong historical contribution to the global church,
Right.
in the way that other traditions have. So we can be experts in other people's traditions, but our tradition is one that other traditions don't value as much as they do each other. And so, I've been to a Christian church seminary, and we take very seriously the Catholic tradition, the Lutheran tradition, the Reformed tradition. But when I go to a Methodist school and I've been to a Reformed school, they don't take the Church of Christ tradition very seriously. They're not reading Alexander Campbell.
No.
But they have me reading Barth. They have me reading Aquinas. They have me reading Luther and Calvin. Who's reading our thinkers besides ourselves?
Interesting.